What's up guys, I'm going to be showing you how I take this photo from this to this using Adobe Lightroom Mobile. So first things first, this is how it looks like when you bring the picture in. And we have all these options here at the bottom. I'm going to be going through each one with you so you can see how they work. But typically what I do is I click on auto first just to see what that does. So if you hold down the photo, you'll be able to see before and after, and you can do that at any point when you're making edits. A quick tip is that when you are editing on your phone, make sure that you have your brightness turned all the way up, because sometimes I find myself editing a photo and trying to increase the brightness, not realizing that it's just my phone screen. So first we're going to click on light, and you'll see here that I can move the exposure up and down. So that takes the exposure up for the entire photo. And these are all the settings that already happened when I clicked on auto. So the same thing with highlights. I can move that up or down. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Your shadows, your highlights, you can really play around with these according to your preference and how you want your photo to look. I like my photos to have tons of color, but to not be overly done, if that makes sense. Now we're moving over to color. And here we have temperature, so you can make it cool or you can make it warm. I like mine to be pretty balanced, so I don't change my temperature too often. Same thing goes with the tint. So you'll see according to how you move it, the whole photo will change and it'll tint according to what's on the scale. Now you'll see that the vibrance is already a positive 16, and that was a result of hitting auto. But if I move the vibrance down, the picture turns black and white. If I move it way up to 100, it's overly vibrant. So I just try to find a middle ground that works for me. There's not a huge difference between vibrance and saturation. So again, just tailor it according to your preference. Now I'm going to be selecting mix at the top right, and you'll see that I have all these different colors associated with the photo. This is where I change all the settings really tailored to my liking. So first I'm going to start with red, and I'm going to move the hue to the left. And watch the photo. Only the reds in the photo change. And if I move it the opposite way, again, they're changing just the hue of anything that has a red tint to it. If I increase the saturation, it's only increasing the saturation on things that are red. And if I move it down, you'll see that anything red in the photo loses its saturation. Luminance refers to how bright or dark that color will be. So if I move it down, my reds turn darker. If I move it higher, my reds turn lighter. Now moving over to orange. You'll see that because my skin tone is more of the orange tint, when I move that up and down, only my skin tone is changing in the color and anything else that's orange there. For saturation, I can bump that up a little bit just so that you can see more of my natural skin tone. And for luminance, you'll see that if I make that darker, my skin tone gets darker. If I make it brighter, my skin tone gets super bright. So I'm editing it to have an even, realistic tone. So now I'm moving over to yellow, and each color has the same settings: hue, saturation, and luminance. So you'll see that when I move the hue up and down, anything yellow in the photo starts to change. Moving on to green. There is a lot of green in my photo, so I'm gonna zoom in to my sneakers so you can see what that does. So I'm moving the green to the left, it's turning yellow, and when I move it to the right, it's turning that bright, bright green. And just because I'm focused on the sneakers here doesn't mean that every other green is not changing. So you'll see the grass in the background is changing. So you wanna make sure you're applying this to make it even across all the greens in your photo. I'm going to skip over to blue because I feel like that's my signature edit detail. A lot of people ask me, how do I make all of the blues on my Instagram page look like that nice teal color? And this is exactly what I do. So I go ahead and I click on blue, and I move the hue over to the left. So you'll see that the blues in my photos start to change a little bit more teal, and when I move it to the right, it gets purple. So I like to keep it to the left. Then with my saturation, I'll just play around with it, but I also have to be mindful of the sky because I don't want my sky to look too fake. And for pink, I can basically just do the same thing, but you do want to be mindful when you're adjusting it too much, your picture can look a little bit distorted and not real. So yes, even though I'm adjusting the colors, I don't want it to look too fake also. The effects page is kind of hard to explain. You just have to play around with it. So here we have texture that you can increase or decrease. We also have clarity. You'll see when I bring that down, it makes it like super smoothed out. Dehaze, so if your photo looks hazy, you can kind of take that away from it, or you can add a little bit more of a haze to your photo. I typically don't change my effects too much. I know one thing that's kind of popular is increasing your grain. So if you ever look at someone's Instagram photo and it has like those little dots to it, it kind of looks a little bit grainy. That's what this feature does. So I'm gonna zoom in so you can see exactly what that does. With no grain and then with grain, it kind of adds a little bit more of a structure to the photo. Going over to detail, I'm gonna zoom in again. We have sharpening to make my photo a little bit more sharp. And one detail that I wanted to point out is noise reduction. So noise reduction is when your photo has kind of some fuzziness to it. So when you increase that, it removes that noise, but then it could look overly smooth. So I'm just gonna keep holding down to see what it looked like before. And the same thing applies for color noise reduction. This is any noise that gets created due to the change of colors. But you'll see when I increase the color noise reduction, it even removes some saturation from my face, which is kind of weird. So again, I typically don't touch the color noise reduction or the effects/details areas to begin with. For geometry, you can change the geometry of your photo. If you need to straighten it, if you want to tilt it a little bit, whatever it is you want to do, you can basically do it all in Lightroom. Last but not least, we have Selective Edits. So if you click on this button that says Selective, this allows you to select a certain part of the photo that you want to change. So the same way the colors took everything orange, say I just wanted to change the orange on my face, I would be able to do that here. So I'm gonna go ahead and highlight my face. And then at the bottom, I'm gonna select light. And you'll see that as I add highlights, only that area that I selected changes. So if my face is just a little bit dark and I wanna brighten it up a little bit, bam, I can do that and it adds more light to that area. This is also a great tool to use if you want to do that thing where your background is black and white. So here I can just highlight all that's in my background, select color, and I will move the saturation down and you'll see my background turns black and white. So that's pretty cool. You can play around with that as you like as well. And finally, one last trick is that after you did all this hard work, you can copy and paste your edit settings to another photo. So in this photo, I'll click on these three dots at the very top right. I will select copy settings. These are all the settings that I made to this photo. I will hit check. And now if I open up a similar photo, this is another photo, no edits as you can see, I can hit those three dots again, select paste settings, and all those settings will be applied to this photo. Now this only works well if the photos are similar. So similar lighting, similar color. If I were to paste these settings to a photo of me in the woods, it probably won't look the same. So just keep that in mind when you're using this tool. So this is what the photo looks like before and after. If you found this video helpful, please give me a comment, share it with a friend, and my next video will be on how I use Lightroom presets to edit my photos. So if you're looking forward to that, let me know below and I'll see you in my next video.